Welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Sebi. Today we are making the July block of the month. We're making more blocks that finish 6 inches square to go with the ones that we made last month in June. They look really cute right next to each other. The only complicated unit we're making in this is a hourglass unit. They're also called quarter square triangles. We've made them before, but I'll go through the instructions one more time. Let's get started. So I'm going to start by drawing a line down the wrong side of my larger squares. And then I'm going to lay them right sides together with the corresponding ones. That one there. Got one more to do here. And for the complete fabric requirements and which ones you need and how much you need to cut, make sure you go to quiltaddictsanonymous.com. You can get all that there in a nice downloadable PDF. It has, the shopping area has changed, so it might look a little different, but it works just the same. So I'm going to bring these back over to the sewing machine. So now I'm setting my stitch width to a scant 1/4 inch, which basically is one needle width to the right of where it normally would be for a 1/4 inch stitch. If your machine doesn't do that, you can achieve it by putting your presser foot right on that line we drew instead of right next to it. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew down both sides of that drawn line on both of my squares. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to the cutting board, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut right down that line that I drew. Accuracy isn't super important at this stage. You don't really have to be right on top of that drawn line for this to work, but you don't want to get too skinny on either seam or it can pop open when it's on the long arm. But as far as accuracy, you already have that because we already stitched by that drawn line. So now I've got my iron out, and I'm going to go ahead and press these open. And we are not going to square up as our next step. We are just going to press them open, and then we're going to sew these together. And once they're sewed together, that's when we're going to press them open. Or that's when we're going to square everything up. So what I'm doing here is I'm pressing them all away from that purple blue fabric. And you'll see why in a second. I'm actually going to nest these seams together. So when we put these together, we're going to put them so that these purple blue fabrics are on opposite sides. And because I pressed the seam underneath the opposite side of the fabric, these seams are going to nest in real nicely. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm flipping this right sides together, and I'm really doing this more by feel than by look, where I shouldn't feel a bump or a gap. I should just feel those seams meeting up real nice. A good way to check is to just go ahead and kind of pull that back. Now, you don't have to pin if you've done a lot of these, but if you're new to it, you might want to put a pin in that seam allowance. And the reason why we're putting it in the center is because that is where the seams are going to come together and where you're going to notice if it's off. So you want to put it right smack dab in the center to hold those in place. Now as we have that done, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on the wrong side of this fabric. And you may need to get out 2 different color markers for this. I'm actually going to do that here. Just grab something from behind me there real quick. So that way you can see really clearly. So I have my dark line here, my light line here. And sometimes you have to do that when you're doing the quarter square triangles using this method. So now I'm going to sew another scant 1/4 inch seam down either side of this drawn line. Make sure to remove that pin when you come to it. You don't want to sew over pins. Alright, now we are back at the cutting mat, and I'm going to cut it apart on that line that I drew. And now you can see that the quarter square triangle has emerged. Alright, it's time to press these open. And these are really tiny, so you want to make sure that you press them good and flat because they might not want to stay open otherwise. But what's great about this method is with 4 squares, I'm going to get 4 of these little units, which are all I need for 1 block. Of course, we're making a lot more than just 1 block, but if you just needed a few of these for like a small table runner or a baby quilt, it's really a fast method, and it certainly is going to speed up the time it takes you to make this block as well. Let's press that last one open, and then we're going to square these up. So now we're going to square these up, and if you've done it right, you should be pretty right on. You should really be trimming off dog ears. In this case, I'm actually even a little under, but it's just a hair, so I'm not going to worry about it at all. But what I am paying attention to is making sure that my 45-degree line is along that seam line, and that my points are as close to that 2.5 inch as possible, because that's what's going to help those points look nice and perfect when we put it together. So I cut that side. I'm going to flip it around. Again, I'm lining up my 45-degree line along the seam. 2.5 is right at my points, so that's good. So we're going to cut that, and now we have a perfect quarter square triangle unit, which is going to make for a really sharp looking block in the next step. So make sure you refer to your free printable instructions on quiltaddictsanonymous.com in order to get the layout diagram for this. But at this point, it's pretty much like putting together a 9 patch. You're just going to sew your rows together and then sew your rows, your bottom row to the center and the top row to the center to have your block. The one thing I would suggest doing is turning the rows so that they're pressed in the opposite direction of the last block. So for example, last month I pressed my center rows so that they were going toward the outside, or my center seams so they're going toward the outside rows. This month I'm going to press them toward the center in all blocks. Well, this is it. This is our July block of the month. You've got 24 to make. Good thing they're tiny. But those tips and tricks should really help. It really goes pretty fast when you're making 4 at a time for these little pieced units. And then the rest are just all squares that you cut apart. So it really goes pretty quick. One thing that I didn't show on camera is I used just a little bit of water on a spray bottle. Mary Ellen's Best Press works really well too. Mine is filled with water right now because I need to get more. But if you just spray that down, then it makes it really easy to get those seams pressed going against the grain. And it takes a little bit extra effort, but it's going to make it a lot easier to get really great points when we put this together at the end of the year. Thanks again for following along. There are still kits available. You can get them at quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Click on the shop section. It looks different. It functions the same. All your passwords still should be the same, but it should be a lot easier to find what you're looking for. Thanks so much for following along, and happy quilting.